The Spin-off Podcast Network.
You're listening to Going Global, a Business is Boring pop-up series brought to you by New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. NZTE wants to help more Kiwi businesses reach their global potential. Visit getthere.nz to find out more. And now, here are your hosts, Brianne West and Simon Pound.
Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome to Going Global, a special pop-up series where we meet some of Aotearoa's most successful and inspiring exporters to find out the secrets to their success and bust some myths along the way. I'm Brianne West and I've been a guest on Business is Boring with my company EdTech, and I'm joining the incredible Simon Pound, who is my co-host to explore everything export.
It's awesome to have someone here who's actually done the work of taking a company to the world, with EdTech's concentrated beauty products now in more than 6,500 stores around the world. And that's what we're here to discuss with this podcast. What does it take to take ideas overseas, and what's holding some people back from exporting? We've found some really interesting facts that tell us that although there have been great moves in the general New Zealand business scene, our exporters are still looking a bit more traditional, a bit paler, a bit maler, and not capturing all the creativity of the local scene.
So we're here to ask, why is this? What does it take to export, and how can we change this? We're speaking to 6 great exporters over 6 weeks to find out, like our guest today, Alliv Samson.
Alliv Samson, co-founded and as Chief Operating Officer, has grown Kami into a huge international business. It's an online shared learning environment that began as a way for 3 students to collaborate with note-taking while at Auckland University. Now, their platform has over 32 million users, is used in 1 and 2 schools in the United States, and has seen huge adoption around the world as COVID disrupted traditional learning. It's one of the fastest growing and most successful exporters that New Zealand has produced, and they have just been named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential companies. So, hi, hey, welcome to Alliv Samson. Tēnā koe. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me today.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I love Kami. It's an amazing company. So, first things first, big question. How did you get started? What was your driver, your mission, your purpose?
Personally, my drive in doing things has always been I want to do things in a bigger scale, in a way. Like, I want to do things where I know that I'm going to make a difference with a lot of people's lives. I've always been interested in technology, so I did study some computer science when I was in the Philippines. When I moved here in New Zealand, I did study political studies and media because that's my other side of interest. And I've always remained quite intrigued into getting into the tech space. And luckily, I've met my then boyfriend, Hinji, and his best friend, Jordan. And they're both software engineers, and they have the same vision as well. They want to do something and build something that would make a difference with a lot of people's lives. Not just like, oh, let's build a tech startup because it's cool, but it's actually what can we do to change other people's lives.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I imagine for software developers who are getting inboxed by everyone trying to employ them, like you can do anything you want in that world, hey, and just make $1. And yeah, well, no, take us back actually to how you actually got the company started. So how did the 3 of you, go from wanting to make a good impact to creating Kami?
Oh, it's a funny story actually, because one morning Hinji just group messaged me and Jordan saying, hey, there's this entrepreneurship challenge competition in Auckland Uni happening. I want us to enter. During that time, they already have their Part 4 project, and they really love the idea. And I'm already got into kind of that project as well, knowing what their product is and all that information. And we were like, yeah, sure. When do we need to submit it? It's like, oh yeah, in 10 minutes. So he was already filling out the form without telling us and completing everything. I was like, sure. Sure, let's do it. So we got in. So we were one of the, I forgot how many finalists there were. So it was a 3-month or a couple of months program wherein they help you learn how to start a business while also putting together the last presentation. and business plan. That's the competition side of it. So that's how we got started. From there, we've met Bob Drummond, who is now our co-founder, chairman, and CRO. He was one of our mentors. So I can talk more about what happened afterwards, but we didn't win the competition, but we did win by having Bob join our team. And he did ask us after the competition, what would you guys want to do? Would you like to continue or something? And we were like, look, we're still keen. We want to move on with this idea. And he introduced us to our first investors, which is really good. And then the rest is history.
That's so weird. That's like a tech starter story. We started at a university competition too, and exactly
awesome.
the same
There you
deal.
go. Yeah.
It's really weird.
I think it's like the perfect chance for you to test your idea and also like test yourself if this is something that you really want to do, which kind of gave us a good, preview of like, oh, hey, this is how you start a business. This is the things that you need to do, which is really cool.
And what was the idea you wanted to explore? And how is it today? Like, is it the same idea or how do you describe it today?
So we started by solving our own personal problems. So as mentioned, I did arts in uni. I spent most of my money printing out all my readings, all the presentations, and it's just too costly and that's not sustainable as well. In Hinge in Jordan, they've always been looking on having a better, more interactive classroom. And they've seen it when they went to the Valley and they've been to Stanford and all these amazing schools. And you can see everybody has their devices already and they're already collaborating and sharing notes, which we didn't have in Auckland Uni during that time. But everyone already has a device in the classroom, in the lecture theater. But no one's talking to each other. Everybody's just taking their own notes, printing stuff, scanning stuff, and doing that, all those things. So we started by solving our own problems, which is I just want to digitize everything. I want to take notes next to the slides in the PowerPoint slides that I receive. It's great that we can now collaborate with the rest of the class all together in real time. So we started by selling and growing within New Zealand universities. That didn't grow as fast as we wanted to. So we pivoted. Right now, it's kind of similar in a way that in between we kind of had a learning process of trying to figure out which market we really want to get into. We did find our way back to education again. Now we are inside the classrooms of K-12 in the U.S. Our biggest market is North America. Teachers use us to do work, but also have their class do more collaborative work, more interactive work. Because right now, publishers don't give textbooks. They give them digital copies. So they no longer have to print it out, give it to students, get them correct or filled up, scan it again on their devices, which is so much mess and just too much time and resources wasted. So now Kami tries to cut that off and make everything more convenient. So it saves teachers a lot of time. Students have more ability to do better in class because now they can interact. They can access all these files even though they have a terrible Wi-Fi connection at home, which the app still works. We collaborate with a lot of learning management systems, so it's easier for the admin part of the school to implement Kami. But also it saves them a lot of money because they no longer have to spend hundreds and thousands a year on printers, photocopy papers, and just all these consumables. So Kami just decreases all that, makes everything more efficient and easier for students. So I guess just starting with our own personal problems into seeing all these opportunities along the way.
I mean, it seems like such an obvious solution. I mean, the best businesses and the best products are an obvious solution. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that explains why it's been a mega success. How big, we've heard some numbers, but how big actually is it?
Right now, we have around 33 million signed-up users. Our biggest market is North America, and we're seeing a lot of interest and growth in Europe and in Asia as well. I think in the past couple of years with the pandemic, it sped everything up by around 5 years of improvement, because even before the pandemic, there's already a lot of K-12 schools looking into their 5-year plan and how they digitize the classroom and transform everything in their resources. I guess the pandemic just made everybody more aware and realize that they got to have a better system so that it's more flexible and more efficient for everyone.
And were you always shooting for something at that scale? Because that's enormous. It's quite amazing to think, and is it a really cool thing to be able to think about the fact that it is, not just saving money and not just saving time and not just making it more efficient, but I imagine helping kids collaborate and share notes and kind of be more than the sum of their parts is really cool.
I guess we always want to do big. That's why when we started, we always have that thinking during that time, okay, you got to start small within the backyard to test out your idea. Unfortunately, we spent 2013 doing that, and it didn't give us the result that we wanted to. For our first year, we got 5,000 signups, and for us, that's not good enough. And we know that we cannot scale that in the process that we were doing in terms of marketing it and trying to pitch it to universities. It's not scalable. So we pivoted around end of 2013. We're at the end of our first seed round funding, and we're like, okay, it's now or never. We're already doing all the work right now. It's not going to be much any difference. Let's just try and go big. Let's go to the US, look at it, see how that goes. And it gave us really good feedback, and that kept us quite interested in just, trying to finesse our business plan and our marketing strategy, which led us to where we are right now.
So what did going to the US actually mean for budding exporters out there? What does that look like for you?
Going to the US looks like I guess it's the way of thinking as well as founders, is that there are choices that needs to be made that we need to just decide on. And one of the things is, not listening anywhere else aside from just focusing on the market. So during that pivot that I've mentioned, we've had feedback from people, oh no, just do this and do that. You can go back to selling to New Zealand schools. Maybe I can connect you to someone or something. But we're quite eager to just see what happens. So we started just focusing on looking into American schools. How's that going? What do they do? What do they need? What does a teacher do in a day as well? Just trying to understand, small details into the market that we're trying to target, and just trying to, clear our perspective from everything else, and just focus on just America during that time. That helped us really have this good direction in terms of just exporting to the US.
Laser focus.
And how do you get on the ground? Did you go and do, visit the schools, or how do you actually as well? Because I imagine selling into schools must be a really locked down process with heaps of procurement and all the rest of it,
Yes.
and councils to get on and panels and this, that, and the other. And teachers don't have discretionary budget necessarily.
Yeah.
So how do you, and selling something for small, quite young children, is quite hard. It feels like you've cracked some of the kind of most challenging things. How do you get in there?
Funniest thing is that we didn't fully focus into education not till 2016. So around 2014, when we pivoted to American market, it was quite wide. We casted our net quite wide. We had doctors, real estate, hotels. Some of the biggest hotel brands started using our product because during that time they see it as a PDF annotation editor. So we did catch a lot of other industries, but we, at some point during that time, there's only 4 or 5 of us in the team, and we gotta focus. We gotta focus even better than what we're already doing. So around 2016, we decided that education is our passion. It helped that during that time, we got a funding from Education New Zealand to attend a trade show. an EdTech trade show in, I think it was Orlando. That was our first trade show. It brought us there and made us realize that all these teachers need our product. They just don't want it. They need it. So that's the difference between the other industries that we've looked into is because, I want this. It's great. It's such a great app. And then, when we met the teachers in person, they were literally crying. And they're like, I need this. That's the keyword, need. So we're like, okay, that's an easy answer then. Education is our pathway. But the next question is, how do we sell? How do we sell to schools? Like selling to professionals is easier. You can just, figure it out easily. But, we're quite eager. Maybe we're a little naive on what we're trying to get into. But we just kept going in a way of we continued talking to a lot of teachers. Every day we talked to hundreds of teachers, like really good conversations. And just getting to know what it's like to be a teacher. What does budgeting look like being a teacher or non-existent budgets? And what would their admin be convinced to buy our app? So there was a lot of research that went on. We did fly back and forth in the U.S. a lot because none of us have been in a U.S. classroom. We didn't grow up in the U.S. So there was a lot of learning in terms of localizing our pitch and also just fully understanding what they really need.
I mean, your product to me is a solid solution for irritating problems I remember at university. But there would have been sort of similar solutions-ish already out in the market. So how did you fight to the death against the likes of Google or Adobe?
Well, we didn't fight them. We embraced them because the best thing, I guess, in terms of having a SaaS, product is that you got to learn how to compete, but also to work alongside with these other players. So in terms of Google, we partnered with them early days. So we get to know their team and get to know what are the needs in terms of their users and what features are actually missing. So our initial growth came from the Google Marketplace, so the Google Chrome Web Store. I don't know what it's called now. They keep changing the name. So that's how we grew. So we didn't have any advertising, any much spend on marketing, but it's all about users finding us from all these platforms, seeing great reviews, and just telling other people about it. So with Google, we've integrated with them. And with Google Classroom, we have a really beautiful integration with them. Similar with other big players, with Microsoft, Canvas, and other big learning management platform. So I think that's what makes Kami stand out compared to other apps out there who kind of does something similar, is that we want to make sure that the workflow of a teacher is just seamless. They don't have to worry about how do I make this work with this and that? So we try to figure out, okay, what apps do you use so that we work well with them? And it's not going to be a hindrance for anyone to just jump onto different apps. So that's one of the biggest things that we look into when we talk to teachers every day is how do I make your life even easier for today? What can I do? So those are the things that we did in terms of big partners.
Yeah, where you mentioned there that, your teachers became your big advocates. And that meant that you didn't have to have massive marketing budgets against some of these massive companies. That kind of reminds me a bit of the EdTech story, hey, where, these beauty brands have the biggest budgets in the world for advertising. So if you can't out-advertise them, you've got to kind of, reach people.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's all about story.
Exactly.
The likes of some of those big CPG or consumer products or beauty brands, they don't have the depth of story that, so many startups and indie brands do. And you've got to lean into that and get people talking about that because, again, it goes back to the why. Why are you doing something? L'Oreal are doing something to sell a product. That's how we competed.
Yeah.
Magic. And we'll be back in a moment to chat about what it means to be an exporter and to get some insight into the most important things to know if you're thinking about going global. We said earlier that exporting looks a lot more like the old traditional New Zealand business. What does that mean, Brianne?
I mean, it's bananas that women are seriously underrepresented when it comes to export. Around 28% of our goods companies in Aotearoa are led by women. But when we look at goods exporters, that number drops to 15%.
What could it do for New Zealand if all of the cool, or even just more of the cool women-led companies in this country did get to exporting?
Just imagine. New Zealand Trade and Enterprise wants to support more people to reach their global potential.
So if you're a woman in business and this kōrero has got you thinking about what you have to offer beyond our borders, get in touch with NZTE. To find out how they can help you get there, head to getthere.nz/woman. We're here with Alliv Samson from Kami discussing exporting, which is something New Zealand needs to do more of. But in an interesting twist, we've found that not everyone who's selling things overseas considers themselves an exporter, and so they're not going and getting the help that they could to grow as much as they could. Is this something that you're found? Like, did you think of yourself as an exporter, Alliv?
Funniest thing, if we've never thought about ourselves as exporter. I guess that's the difference. If you have a digital product, you can just go anywhere that you want without leaving your room, and not worrying about some of the barriers into physically exporting items. But looking back at it, we are exporting because we want to maintain our team here in New Zealand, but still focusing overseas as our main market, which is quite interesting looking back at it.
Yeah, and hearing you say earlier that it was things like attending a conference with the support of a government body that kind of kicked you into another gear. Like, do you think thinking of yourself as an exporter means that you would go and seek out that help earlier?
I think looking back at the things that we've gone through while we're establishing ourselves in the U.S., we would have done things a little bit faster and better than we would have done if we did have some help, especially when you're trying to get into some paperwork and, structuring a new company in a Delaware C Corp or some taxes or anything that you need to think of and also look into when you're starting a business. I really wish we did have some help. We did have some help, but, the help that could have been given would have increased some of these admin work that we've encountered along the way.
Yeah, and as COO, I'll bet that a lot of those headaches end up in your email inbox.
Oh, yeah. I'm so thankful, though, because, like I said, we did have some help from some individuals, and it was nice that Bob, he had a company who's already exporting into the U.S., so he already had a to-do list of things that we need to do, and that was easy for us. But I can imagine if someone with no resources, you can't just easily Google that as well, because things change so fast, and there are so many details that you need to know to get things more efficiently, I guess. That's when you got to start looking for help and asking those who can help you in doing that side of the business.
I do wonder if one of the reasons we see that drop-off in companies that export is through preconceived notions about what export means and how hard it is, or challenges and barriers that you may or may not face. Did you have any thoughts about what it would be like that were or were not true?
I guess for us, we've always learned that there's always a cheat sheet somewhere that we can just follow when we're trying to, someone from Y Combinator would have created a blog post on how to start a business in the U.S. if you're an overseas business. So we kind of took that as a great way to get started. But I can imagine if your business is something different, or even some digital businesses, I can imagine would still encounter some problems or some challenges along the way that would definitely make them feel like, oh, this is impossible to go through. But, the great thing is we do have resources. We have resources here.
Yeah, New Zealand is one of those places where if you've got a question, you can find out, there's so many people willing to help you.
Exactly, which is great. there's NCTE. We've met a lot of them while we were in the U.S. as well. Even some small questions, they would be easily, help us or introduce us to the right people or give us the right link to something, or which is really useful.
Yeah. So overall, you found export a positive experience, and it wasn't perhaps as difficult as people might imagine?
The funniest thing I find, like when we started exporting to the U.S., that was way easier than us knocking on the doors in uni. Like it was such a struggle, like trying to knock on professors' doors and convincing them, hey, please use technology. I find that exporting to the US is actually easier for us.
Yeah, what are some of because you're in a lot of places around the world, hey, like what are some of the differences you've found between these markets, and how do you work out, the differences when you're developing a market and what you have to do?
So since we've always had a small team, so resources-wise, we're quite restricted. So we really need to go back to that focus and just focus on America, even though we were seeing a lot of growth in Hong Kong per se, or UK or somewhere in Europe. So we're still open to that, but we're slowly just keeping an eye on it, I guess, on how it plays out, because at some point we will need to grow and start developing those markets. So for us, what would be the best path to open the next market next? It's always been our daily question. Will it be UK? Will it be Asia? So we're just always keeping an eye on that. And we maintain that conversation and communication with the users as well. Like I know I've mentioned, we make sure that we talk to teachers every day. And that's not just the founders, but everybody in the team has to talk to a teacher, has to have that conversation so that they understand and sympathize with them, and not just it's just a number. It's an actual person that you're helping and you're dealing with. So we do that with overseas teachers as well. Like we're trying to figure out, what does a Japanese teacher feel and see in terms of how does the classroom work for her? How do we help her into making her day-to-day life easier? So we're constantly thinking of that, just trying to replicate what we did in the US, but also trying to figure out, okay, is there anything else that's special in that region that we didn't do in the US, but we should be doing for this region? Just constant learning and questioning, I guess.
Yeah, that's the key to success in different markets, is without question, you can't just drop your cookie cutter business into each area. I know a lot of businesses try. And I think it's really interesting. A lot of companies I know and entrepreneurs feel they've got to have this, 3-5 year plan where year one, we're going to go to America, year two, we're going to go to Japan, year three, we're going to do this. But it's so much more relaxed than that. I mean, we have never, ever planned an entry into a country in my life, and it's all just happened organically, and it's
Exactly.
obviously very
same.
That's where the demand comes from, right?
Exactly. So it's just making sure you're always observing what is happening around you, because that would dictate where you're going to go next. And it's not just I'm going to go here because reasons. It's not going to work out, because that's how you grow organically, like you've mentioned, Brianne, is actually the market telling you that, hey, we're ready for you. Come sell us something.
Yeah.
So do you think that's the key to sort of your success in selling in those different markets?
I think so, because it made, like I've mentioned, we've never had advertising before. Everything was organic. We really focused heavily on building our community of teachers, and how do we leverage that, and how do we grow that and scale that further with the limited resources that we've had. So for us, that's very important in any way of looking into getting into a new market as well.
Nothing more powerful than word of mouth.
Yeah, it really feels like you've done things your own way as well, because I think if you were to have, not picked the right financial partners, to invest in you and stuff, and if you'd gone down a really typical Silicon Valley, raise a big round and then spend it all on Google and Facebook advertising, you might have had a different path. But I keep hearing, this focus and this really intentional way of not just spending money on advertising and not just running at every opportunity.
Yeah, I think we got really, really good at just knowing what we can and cannot do. Personally, what are our strengths? in how can we leverage that during that early period of the business. You see a lot of, say, startups raising massive funds and just going hard on advertising, which for us is like, that's great, but how do you keep them if they don't actually love your product? So that's an obvious question. So for us, like raising fund for us, it's more like finding, like you mentioned, finding the right partner so that we do get into the right path. We do share the same understanding of where the business should be, but also give us enough resources to give us the best advice that we can for the next stage of the business. Yeah, that helped us quite a lot.
Because there must be big needs for, those kind of capital partners when you do go from a startup to having 32 million and still growing like the absolute clappers,
Yeah. Well, especially during now that, with all the VC funds floating around, things are better in terms for an EdTech company. Because pre-COVID, when you say you have an EdTech company, oh, that's not sexy. It's not a social media platform. It's not an Instagram or not even a TikTok during that time. But it's not an easy pitch, to sell to investors. And there's always a question of how will that work in terms of selling. But now that we've gone through this couple of years of learning through the pandemic, a lot of money has been put into EdTech. But that doesn't mean that it's an easy, yes, I'll take your money and move forward. But also we're trying to remain true to ourselves. Okay, what have we been doing this past few years? Where do we want to go next? So those are very important for us. And it's not just, here's more money throwing at you.
I've never understood that really bizarre, particularly Silicon Valley way of raising money. They raise so much. Like eye-watering. And then they spend it all, and I have no idea what on, because how can you even spend $300 million in like 3 months? Obviously, you knew just by the sheer success of what you've achieved, I would imagine you have too many regrets or things you would do differently. And look, at the end of the day, what you've done has got you where you are. But is there anything you would tell yourself if you could go back in time and say, look, please, for the love of God, don't do that, or do more of this?
Yeah. I think the biggest regret, personally, I don't know what my co-founders have in their mind, but personally, I find that 2013 was the biggest waste of time for us. It's where we started. That's where we learned and did things. Because, when we started the business or the business plan, when we joined that competition, we've always wanted to grow big overseas. But we kind of did the opposite. Really, I don't know what happened, but we did the opposite, wherein we stayed local and we tried doing it locally, and that didn't work for us. So I think in terms of when you think of a startup, every year feels like a 10-year, feels like a decade. So I wish we could have taken that year and done better on that year. We could have immediately went to the US and grew even faster than we were. So that was my biggest regret. Maybe not taking that chance that we've been thinking of. We should have gone big on day one. And that's one of the things I always tell other entrepreneurs or people who want to jump into their entrepreneurship is like, oh, I'll just start small, or I'll just start New Zealand. It's like, why? Is there a reason why you should start in New Zealand? If there's a good reason, then great. But if you're like us, who was, immediately like a digital business, we could have easily gone to the bigger market, which we've always wanted to, but we didn't. I think if only I knew, or we knew, that it was that easy, we could have done that.
What is big?
Big for us is when we know that teachers around the world know our product and they love our product, which right now we know that we're big because it kind of reflected in the recent press that we've got. We know that we have that influence because teachers are talking about us and telling great things about us. So that's big for us.
Tell us about that recent press. Like, how does it feel to land in the Time 100 Most Influential Companies and Ideas list?
It's surreal. I have a funny story on how we found out about it. So we've March 30th, I saw a Slack post from someone, and I was just laughing because I was like, this is the most elaborate April Fool's ever. I love it. And it was real. It was real. And I just kept looking at the website. It's like, really? Is it real? Because just the day before, I saw the cover floating online. And in my mind, I was like, wouldn't it be cool to be part of that list? And then the next day, we found out we were part of the list. And we're like, what just happened? So it's because, Time Magazine talked to a lot of teachers, and they've been talking about Kami. So that's the influence that we've got. So we didn't win the best company in the world or the biggest company in the world, but we got in there because teachers talk about us and they love us, which is a great way to look into the years of work that we've done, that we're actually doing something good and we're doing something big. That's how we describe big as well, is it actually working? Do teachers actually love us?
Does it actually have a positive impact on people's lives, not just how many you touch? That's
exactly.
really nice.
Which is really good. And the rest of the team, they're still waiting for Ashton Kutcher to get out of the van and say, you're punked. It's still a running joke in the office.
He's more like, I think these days isn't he more likely to jump out and say, can I invest?
I know.
That's true.
I was about to say. But it's a running joke in the office. But because it's not just me, but the rest of the team, there's just, surreal.
Yeah. And where do you think you are on your journey? These are some big numbers, but the wave of EdTech and digitization is still pretty new, hey?
Still pretty new because, when you look at it, it's been centuries of not much progress in the classroom. We've always been stuck in the four walls of the classroom with the blackboard in front of you, teachers stuck in front of the classroom. So we're trying to change that to make sure that it works for the teacher and the students. Now, teachers doesn't have to stand in front. They can just walk around with their Chromebook, talk to the students, talk to those who really need their attention. And for those who can easily do their work, they're already helping other students as well, not just themselves. So we're changing what it looks like in the classroom, but also, removing the barrier, removing that, the walls that just separates a good student from a bad student. So one of the things that we've learned visiting schools is that there were separate classes for special needs students, and they used different apps for that. And we're like, you can use Kami and you can join the rest of the class. You don't have to be labeled something just because you have a different way of learning. Now they just combine the class because they just use Kami together. And it just gives them this opportunity to be part of the rest of the class, but also doing their learning in their own pace, which is...
Yeah, that's so magic. And as a final thought, what advice would you have for someone thinking of going global?
Do it. Like I said, whenever I meet someone who really wants to do something, I would just tell them, look, do it. There's no better time than now. If you feel like you got to do something, then you got to do it. I'm not saying it's easy. There's always challenges along the way. There's always a lot of, questioning yourself whether you're in the right path. But you wouldn't know until you start doing it. And there's no stopping in, whether it's a tangible product or a digital product. Like Brianne has already shown us, you can easily sell overseas easily. You can do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so magic. Thank you so much for sharing your export story with us today. That's Alliv Samson. Tēnā koe.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that. I love how she comes from a place where she just wants to have such a positive impact on the people who use their product. But I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was go big or go home from day one, not just, it was all leap forward straight away into international markets, because I was always taught that if you aren't profitable in your home country, don't look offshore until you've sorted that out. And look, it has some merit, but it just goes to show you that that's not the case in every situation.
yeah, if there's a massive global opportunity, maybe go chase it. And I love the way that she was saying that identified that was the opportunity, then they didn't do it. But like if you've identified it, like run really hard. And the other thing I thought was really cool was that focus point, which, you know, you've got so many of these opportunities come in and they're real shiny and you want to pursue them and you want to chase them. But they're such a great proof point that if you do focus on that big goal and just on the big goal, you'll go a lot further than by putting your energy into 10 directions.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurs are like magpies, and you do get absolutely hammered with all sorts of opportunities. It's super duper exciting, particularly in the early days. So if you don't focus, you will just wallow away, not achieving anything. So that's a very good point.
Oh, I love them. They're doing such a great job. So thank you to Alliv Samson for coming in. Thanks, Brianne. Thank you to you for listening. And for everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Butler. Do follow Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what we do, please do rate or leave us a review. E noho rā.
You've been listening to Going Global, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. It was hosted by Brianne West and Simon Pound. It was produced by Te Butler, with content management by Rachel LaRue and series production by Jane Yee. Special thanks to our partnerships editorial team of Elisa Rivera, Alice Webb-Liddell and Simon Day. If you want to know how New Zealand Trade and Enterprise can help you take your business to the world, visit getthere.nz today.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.